Hey, what's going on, everybody? My name is Matt Jarbo. This is Three Buck Theater, and over the course of the past 3 months, I have been one of the more vocal, I don't want to say haters, but critics of Star Wars The Last Jedi. And as a result of that, it's kind of garnered me a bit of a reputation here on YouTube, and that's totally fine. It's a movie that I do not see eye to eye with, and I think that's okay. In the long run, I think it's going to be fine. Not every movie is going to be great. There's some pretty bad Harry Potter movies, but the franchise overall is pretty good. But one of the things I always find to be interesting is when there is a critical backlash against something, and the backlash is based on valid arguments about characters, about narrative, about plot structure, and all of that is very much shielded from the director, right? The director gets to basically walk away from it unscathed when the movie bloggers set out to protect him. And we've seen that more recently with Ava DuVernay in The Wrinkle in Time. The movie both bombed, not doing, I don't want to say bombed, but didn't do very well theatrically and didn't do very well critically or audience reception wise. And yet there's been almost no backlash against how Ava DuVernay handled the franchise. And I bring this up because when you look at Rian Johnson and The Last Jedi, it's very similar to how they're being protected. Almost as if these people can't handle valid criticism against their work. And don't get me wrong, there are people out there that are 100% haters of this, and they say some of the most just insane crap that makes no sense. They're pushing out conspiracy theories left and right. And I've talked a lot about those kind of things. And some things I find funny, some things I find to be really stupid. But ultimately, I am a Star Wars fanboy. I will be till the day that I die. I'm still going to be purchasing The Last Jedi when it comes out next week, I believe. Mostly because even though I didn't really care entirely for the movie, I still own the prequels. You know what I mean? It's kind of like it's part of the collection. And there are elements of the film I like and would like to rewatch multiple times. And there's elements of the movie that are just going to be skip, 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 skip. But that being said, Rian Johnson right now is currently working on a new trilogy. There's, he started some work on it. It's not production work. It's just script writing, plotting, those kind of things. But when Fandango asked him about whether or not he was going to let backlash against The Last Jedi I guess you could say alter his opinion or dictate where things go for this new trilogy, he wasn't the most receptive, and that actually bothers me. But first, let's take a look at what he actually said. I feel like every Star Wars thing that gets made has this big, loud response because Star Wars fans are passionate and that's what makes them awesome. I don't think it's possible when, if you're really telling a story you care about and having it come from your heart, it's just not possible to be intellectually processing what everyone else wants, nor would it be a good thing, a healthy thing. I don't think that's a good way to tell a story. There's just so much potential and I can't wait to jump into it. What makes me so excited about it is the idea of doing a new story on the big canvas of 3 movies in this world. Okay, I get that. I understand that he's excited to be able to kind of walk into this trilogy of films completely open, able to do whatever he wants, to tell whatever story he wants, and that's going to be something that's going to be allowed by Kathleen Kennedy. And who knows, it could be good. He could be able to craft this awesome, excellent narrative over the span of 3 films and have that be a great addition to the franchise. Whereas with The Last Jedi, it's entirely possible that he just felt like he was walking in to somebody else's story and then just kind of went with it. And that would actually make more sense if you think about it. He clearly didn't care for The Force Awakens. I believe that is just 100% accurate at this point, given the complete disregard for what JJ had set up and the plot points there. And it's not necessarily that what JJ did was 100% perfect and couldn't be expanded upon, changed a little bit, improved, so on and so forth. There were many things in that movie that could have been improved upon. But the thing is The Force Awakens felt like a Star Wars movie. The Last Jedi felt like 2 movies rolled into one with an incomplete narrative and character changes that made very little sense because they were not explained to us from the perspective of the audience that's been with this franchise for 40 years. I found that to be very odd. And then when he says like, well, you're telling the story from your heart and you can't process what people are saying entirely, it's like, no, you're being shielded from the criticism here. Why not at least acknowledge that there might have been some errors with how you handle the characters? There's nothing wrong with being critical of your own work. There's nothing wrong with, at the time, this saying, like, at the time, this felt like the right call. The audience, on the other hand, didn't agree, and I understand that now. At least we know going into this particular franchise that he probably won't be messing around with any legacy characters. He'll probably be telling some ancillary side story that will be having whole new characters, and that will be a thing. And again, I'm not against that. I'm not against him directing these movies. He's only directing the one. He's writing the first one, I think, and plotting the scripts for the next two, which I really then hope that there is some level of karma that comes into play here, and the director of the second one just crumples up that outline and throws it away and just be like, this is for Star Wars fans, bitch. No, that's not going to happen, obviously. But and this, who knows, even the trilogy in and of itself could change direction, could change a whole bunch of things by the time it gets to the silver screen. What I want Johnson to realize here, and what I want all of you guys watching to realize here, is that when it comes to the backlash against The Last Jedi, it's not from people who hate the movie because, oh, there's a woman in it, or there's women's, and that's such a dumb narrative. And that is only a few people that were mad at the movie. Very similar to the Mad Max Fury Road controversy, where it was like, oh, boycott the movie because of feminism. It was one guy on a pickup artist website who absolutely despises men's rights activists, who were then accused of being the ones to push this narrative. So what I see here is you've got like the movie bloggers that like to push this, oh, white men hate Star Wars because it's got the women's. And that narrative is what ends up going predominantly to Rian Johnson. That's what he sees. So when he's asked by Fandango, if the criticism of the backlash is in any way going to influence it, he's like, no, it's not. And the reason why is because he hasn't talk to anyone about the backlash or the influence that I think actively cares. I think a lot of what we're seeing from this are people who are shielding him, like Ava DuVernay, people who are very much trying to look after him to make sure that he doesn't get that kind of backlash. They want to be the white knight for Rian Johnson. And if you're going to sit there and go, no, that's not the case at all, I really do think that a lot of it is. Because we've seen this multiple times over the years. We've seen this in not only gaming, but in movies and the tech world. You have what's called enthusiast press, and they will shield these creators or these people from the criticism that they rightfully deserve because of whatever reason, because there's a narrative. I mean, look at Ghostbusters 2016. All right, like that was so protected in the narrative of people hate this because of it's an all-female reboot. No one really cared. Maybe a couple vocal people, a minority of people maybe said something online. But when it became so much valid criticism on the movie that ended up very much, being one of the reasons why people got mad at it and they didn't care for it because it wasn't a well-made film. That, of course, was completely just shrugged off. And then it was just chalked up to misogynists and sexists, so on and so forth. And we're seeing that here. So you can see that there's a playbook that gets used repeatedly in these situations. I don't care that Star Wars The Last Jedi focused on Rey and Leia and Admiral Hodo and Rose. I don't care. All right. I just want a good story told within that world. I don't care who it's about. You could tell me the story of Greedo and I'd be totally on board with that, provided it's an interesting story with an interesting arc and a good beginning, a middle, and an end. That's all people care about. And so when you look at The Last Jedi, and when you look at how Rian Johnson handled The Last Jedi, and especially how he handled Luke and how he handled Leia, you're just like, what the hell is going on? Like, did no one stop him at any point in time and go, this may have been a bad idea? And it seems like some of the actors knew about this, especially Mark Hamill, and they've now come out to defend him because that is what the corporate structure wants. That's what corporate wants. That's what Lucasfilm wants. That's what Kathleen Kennedy and Bob Iger want. They want these things protected, and they want Rian Johnson protected because they've now invested into him in a very public way, and that's unfortunate. No one is above criticism. Not myself, not Rian Johnson, not Kathleen Kennedy. No one is above criticism. Not everyone is always going to make their best work 100% of the time. Johnson is a solid, capable, competent director. I want to make that abundantly clear. The Last Jedi, while I didn't care for narrative elements of it, was beautifully directed, and I was invested in the way it looked. But when it came to story elements and characters, and I will keep bringing that up because I want people to realize that is the criticism that people have. It has a lot to do with the fact that Johnson is not a competent storyteller when he's the one telling the story. What he did so well on Breaking Bad when he directed episodes of that was it wasn't his story, right? There were producers that were overseeing all of it. He just came in and he directed and he was good. This is exactly why when I made my video about how Star Wars can save itself from basically itself, is that what they need is someone like Dave Filoni over there at Lucasfilm to kind of be the Kevin Feige of the Star Wars universe in order to make it a bigger, bolder, crazier thing that has beginnings, middles, and ends, arcs, phases, if you will, so on and so forth, in order to push this thing to the next level. And so people like Johnson can come in and they can give it their creative flair, but they're not going to be the ones that are going to be dictating the key story plot points that are going to push things along. And that is what we need at this point. We need to treat these franchises like you would see a television series, because that's ultimately what they're planning on being, right? Multi-year, multi-phase, long arcs that are going to play out over the span of a decade or so. We've seen this with Marvel, and it's a provable business model if done correctly. And that's why I think that at this point, they need to not protect Rian Johnson. To get back to that point, they need to not protect Rian Johnson, need to explain to him this is a criticism people had, and you cannot sit there and shy away from this and just go, no, I had my heart and soul into this. This is this. No. Because what you wrote in the book, there are changes in the book that are being made in order to kind of retcon the story, because that tells me that somewhere people know what was wrong. And the sad truth of the matter is you won't admit it to not only the audience, but to yourself. And I think if you admitted it to yourself that there might have been some narrative issues with the film, then maybe you'll be better as a filmmaker. And going forward, since you're getting a trilogy, quite frankly, that's just what the rest of us want too. So anyway, I want to know what you guys have to say about this. Do you think Johnson should be immune from criticism, which is kind of what's being happening here? Do you think he's living in La La Land in regards to this particular statement? Am I overthinking it? I really do want to hear your criticisms on that one. Be sure to let me know in the comments below. My name is, of course, Matt Jarbo. This has been 3 Buck Theater. If you haven't already, thumbs up the video, subscribe to the channel. YouTube is not showing you every single video, so you got to be sure to click that bell and follow me on social media. And I'll talk to you guys later. Have yourself a great day, and peace out.